This is a Maplesoft digital education podcast.
I was with a colleague here this morning and we were conversing with someone at a different college, and he was mentioning class sizes of 450 students. And as much as I think that does draw away from sort of the student-instructor interaction, if that becomes a reality, I think there's a need then to have a better online tool that provides more robust feedback, so we can actually create more of an authentic interaction between faculty and students. I think MapleTA can offer us that with the way that it offers feedback and the way that students can interact with problems and reach out to faculty when there are problems associated with that. So.
Yeah, like I see the ability of servicing large numbers, so the scalability and also the convenience of online assets. That I would say is just table stakes. You know, it's almost a given. But what I really hope that as we sort of move to the we'll say the digital environment from the textbook environment or analog environment, which we're kind of right in between now, that it is truly more than just about saving money and being more efficient, maybe more convenient. It's about a better educational experience, you know, that the student actually feels this was a great educational experience. And I think we can do that, but it will take gifted instructors to sort of have that as their goal. It's not just about saving money. I do think once you have that better educational experience, I think you're absolutely right. If the experience does not go down by adding more students, you should be adding as many students as possible. It's almost, I think, a society good, right? If you can educate without reducing the quality of that education, 1,000 students versus 50 students, why would you not do that? It's one of my pet peeves. A lot of educational institutes are very, well, I wish I could think of a better term, but full of themselves, and that they're very proud that they turn away so many students. You know, they're very proud of being at the elite pinnacle of education, and I think that is an attitude that needs to go away. Yes, I don't want to scale it up so that the education experience goes down, but they should be there looking at education more as a service, that they should be trying to scale that to as many students as they can provide, as opposed to having this elitist attitude. I mean, I think your attitudes are right along those lines.
Well, yeah, I think that would correlate directly to sort of NAIT's greater vision and our 2021 plans in terms of if a student is not successful in one specific program area, we hope that they're going to be well attached enough to our school that they'll start investigating another program area. And I think that speaks toward our authenticity, because we can jump in right away and we can say, yep, this course is made for you. This is what you signed up for, and if you're not having a great experience there, you won't have a great experience there when you're done and when you're in your career field. So let's set up other pathways for you, and let's set up some transferability to make it easy for you. And that really has been a great focus of NAIT, is to continue to offer ongoing opportunities toward our students, that if you're not successful in area A, that you hopefully will continue on your educational path and be successful in B. And I certainly agree with you. There is some institutions who see failing students as a cash grab, as a way to make more money.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is absolutely true.
Yeah, and you know, they sometimes even set up, I hate to say this, but I think they do set up grading structures that make it impossible for some of the students to be successful in those programs. The student fails out and they maybe aren't even welcome back. At NAIT, that's not our vision. Our vision is, at least I believe it's our vision, to a failed student is a lost opportunity in that specific program area, with a subsequent opportunity to follow in a different program.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful concept. Maybe tell me more about your industrial partners, because you do seem to be very connected between the industries that you're serving and the school system, a better connectivity than I've seen in many institutions. So maybe tell me more.
Well, I mean, it's centralized or sort of north central Alberta. We're situated in Edmonton, so really the hub, I guess you would, of oil sands and industry activity related to trades. And, we certainly do have a reliance on industry for receiving funding from them, and we certainly pay back that funding in many different ways with regards to research and, of course, educating people specific to their trades areas and demands. But in all reality, that's really NAIT's focus is to educate and to train specific to that area and make those connections with industry. So if we didn't do that, I don't think we'd be nearly as successful. We'd be graduating students that are more inclined to leave the workplace after 1 or 2 years because they really don't know what it's like. And we do see that, I think, in a lot of areas of education is students are trained, they enter the workforce, and within a year or two they burn out because they don't
know this is not what I want to do, and they've wasted 5 or 6 years to get to that point.
Exactly, absolutely, and that is so common in some educational areas. But as a polytechnic, that's not what we seek to do. Is we seek to develop strong industry partners so that we can develop educational programs that will actually foster people that are great in that environment. And that's
so they're happy, their employer is happy. Yeah, it's just a better equation.
Exactly, and if they're not, if for whatever reason we're producing graduates that aren't meeting the industry demand, that actively consult with them and talk about injecting certain principles or objectives into our curriculum to make sure that it is applicable to the specific trade or industry that students are entering.
And I would see this that the other problem I have with education is that it tends to be sort of a one-shot. You pick mechanical engineering, you go in, you come out. And you might be an alumni, and might ask you for money every year, but there's not much of a connection. I think in the future, industries are going to be changing faster. What about the concept of, okay, you've educated a student for a particular industry, but that industry changes over the next 10 years. I mean, the model you just described would seem to be well suited for that person to either upgrade, within that industry, or potentially transition to another, just because industry is moving faster and the needs are going to change over a period of time. So having the concept of lifelong learning and an institute that would actually support that lifelong learning seems to be a much better model than, I would say, at many of the university levels, which is more of a one-shot deal. And yes, they can come back and do a PhD or a master's, but it's not. There's no concept of transitioning, through a lifelong learning experience.
Yeah, and to speak on that, I mean, internally, what our focus on is constant curriculum review processes, so that we're not delivering the same thing that we were 10 years ago. That we are delivering mandates that meet current industry and current technology, and that's a massive part of our entire curriculum development process that is constantly revisited every few years. And I don't know the exact number on that, but from the corporate side of things or industry side of things, we do have a fairly significant large corporate international training, so that industry can come to us, post-graduation with workers and to say, we seem to be lacking in a specific area. We need some revitalization here, and
we can upgrade in this area.
And we'd work with them in developing some curriculum and some courseware that can target that specific industry and help their workers become successful in an industry that is full of new grads. So it's to me that's really why I enjoy working there, is because it's it is a very different atmosphere than what a university is typically focused on. And our leader, our president Glenn Feltham, always prides himself, and I believe this to be true, is NAIT is a world-leading polytechnic, that we're a very large institution that trains people for a very specific industry, and we're always revitalizing and encouraging staff and students to partake in sort of state-of-the-art industry activities, and we do our best to try to meet that.
Talk to me a bit about how you approach content, textbooks, printed content versus content that you either develop internally or potentially share from other institutions. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an interesting field. That's a really interesting part because right now what we're finding is there's sort of these pockets that are developing on campus when they're adopting various tools that don't tend to cross-share or share well at all. It creates difficulty for the student environment because they're managing two different online platforms. Students start to get to a point where they don't actually know how to enter their answers, or they're entering answers with syntax that was supposed to be used in the other platform. Our vision on sort of open educational resources is to allow our people to share, most definitely across our institute. From everybody I've talked to, that's sort of the norm for us. It's going to create workload efficiencies. It's going to essentially make everybody's life easier when we are creating those opportunities. Globally, I haven't had a lot of discussions on that, but NAIT certainly in the past has not been this institute driven on that's ours, it belongs to us. It has more been, that is something that we've worked with others, and others have volunteered their time to make it better, so we should equally contribute. And it's sort of less, I guess, self-centered in a way. We find that we rely so much on our community to help our institute grow and be better, that at times when we can provide for them, we should. And that's generally the conception that I've gathered from people on that.
I mean, just talking to you, I do get the image of being very adaptive to needs, and therefore constantly changing materials. So I have a hard time I do think that digital technologies generally, like we're deploying digital content for your students, it's almost the only way. Like you're almost, if you want to be that adaptive to the needs of a changing industry, I see digital as really the only path ahead. Trying to do, create printed textbooks in this type of environment would be challenging. Especially if they only get updated at a very slow update rate. Yeah,
and that by itself has actually caused more workload hurdles than anything with regards to when the mindset of the classic constructor thinking, and this happened to me constantly, is I know I built a question that involved that particular application 3 or 4 years ago, and I don't know what course that was in, but I can comb through my 6,000 documents in my documents folder hoping to find it. And it just doesn't work. That model doesn't work. If I can go into a system like MapleTA and type in, sinusoidal applications to, COPD or a respiratory therapy problem of some kind, and I can target a search and pull that question, look at the statistics, and say, yeah, that was a tough question for my students, or that was an easy question for my students. That would make things so much easier in quiz generation. So absolutely, I think the propensity to move digitally is phenomenal, and I think that's what we're seeing now. Is we're starting to see institutes are adopting things like OneDrive and SharePoint to be able to share Office documents and search and sort and collaboratively work on those. With regards to assessment content, it's the content pre-existing to MapleTA was, for lack of a better way to describe it, stuck in a certain course within our LMS. And I truly mean stuck in a certain course. So if I wanted to move it from this course to this course, I had to duplicate files on the server, which is infrastructure cost associated with that. And B, when I want to modify content,
doesn't ripple through the system.
Doesn't ripple through, and and it's frustrating because then I got to start to think, oh, what other courses are using this same question. And MapleTA has an amazing ability to create efficiencies in that regard.
And I think, I wish we could take credit for it, but very much it was the University of Waterloo that they realized, when they began creating courses, their initial concept was the work was going to be in the creation. And what they found in practice was the work was in the maintenance and updating. And so in many ways, we responded to what they clearly communicated as the need. Like, how do we make it easy to update and reuse components. And that's, that's why even in sort of the mandate of we describe the product, it's about the creation, but also the management and deployment of digital assets. And that is probably the big cost savings, over a long period of time.
Yeah, I was actually in a fairly reasonable, lengthy discussion with regards to a similar platform that we're hoping to find for DLOs, or just general digital learning objects, because this manages and shares and filters down assessment content really, really nicely. But right now, we could spend a year building a DLO for a specific program, and 2 years later, because industry has new codes or new standards, we have to modify that DLO. And we have to find the DLO, then we have to modify the DLO, then we have to redistribute the DLO, and we're actually actively sort of looking for a platform that can manage and share DLOs in the same way that our assessment content can be managed and shared using Maple today.
And I do see, the way we envision the future is that assessment will be tightly integrated with that learning object. So, you would have a number of a drill and practice number of assessment, but directly tied. So that, they live in a unit and they're related to each other. And that's what you manage and mix and match. That's, I'm hoping will be the future. And each one will gather, statistics and analytics on its usage. And, the goal is to be able to measure enough so the best stuff, the best components, can bubble to the top, and the bad components where people are getting misled or hung up automatically get flagged, because it is true that so much data. I mean, I've said it this morning that pretty soon we're going to be awash in data. The challenge won't be having data; it will be how do you interpret this massive stream of usage data.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Google is in a similar situation, right? How are they going to manage all of that?
And they do a really good job of it too.
They do, but again, they're still washed out in so much data, they don't know what to do with the half of it. But ultimately, that's the type of technology that makes our life easier. I was driving in yesterday actually from the Pearson Airport, and there was a fender bender apparently on the 401, and I'm going, how am I going to get here? How am I going to get here? And you go to Google, and Google tells you, this track is red, and it's going to slow you down by 8 minutes. If you turn right at this corner, take off 2 minutes from your time. And it's impressive to let technology and the analytics tied to technology create those type of efficiencies in your daily life.
There's no question. I'm a bit older than you, and I tell a lot of our staff who travel, travel is easy now. You land in some country, you pull out your phone, you call an Uber. You know where you are, you know what the currency conversion is. There's just no issues. Yeah. They laugh when you say, well, you used to have to memorize special telephone numbers and to dial home. It was traveling used to be so much harder. Yeah. So we do live in an age where there's some concerns, privacy and sharing of data, but we do live in an age where life is a lot easier.
Oh, for sure. I remember, I don't know, it used to happen to me all the time 4 or 5 years ago. You send in an email and you put in the words, as per the attachment, you're going to find the following, and you forget to attach the file, right? And you send it, and a minute later, you're resending the same thing and saying, oops, sorry, I forgot. Yeah. Now, when you just encompass that catchphrase, see the attachment within the body of your email, and you forget to attach it, when you hit send, it tells you, it's like, you forgot to attach. Are you sure you don't want to be attaching something to this? So those are the efficiencies that technology has created for us.
And I think education is just at, unfortunately, you would have hoped that education should be at the leading edge, of these changes. For what we've seen, that's not the case there. But I do think it's an area, maybe disruption is the wrong word, ripe for disruption. There's so many avenues for improvement, and the technology is all there. It's just a matter of, instructors using it, understanding it, making the right interpretation. But it's going to be an exciting 5 years. I think education is going to look very different 5 years from now. Just like our lives were very different,
Absolutely.
10 years ago. I expect education will have that level of quantum change, like to the point that you can, use the term disruptive change, and I think it'll be for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually NAIT just built a giant center of applied technology, or a CAT building, that's really effectively, I'd say, doubled our campus size. And with that, we created this sort of bring your own device policy, where we're trying to invoke less resources into our own IT infrastructure and allow students to bring their own, which from a universal design perspective creates a more comfortable environment for students.
Absolutely.
They can go into a classroom and say, I know the screen reading software is going to be installed in my laptop. I know how the webcam works. I know how the pen works and the mouse works, and I don't have to worry about whether it's PC or Mac or what software. I can bring my own device into there, and that's something that we looked at with MapleTA, was the ability to be able to house different browsers in different environments and mobile devices. And I talking to some faculty about even the lockdown capabilities of MapleTA, because there are other lockdown browsers available, but MapleTA's built-in lockdown browser, for example, this is going to allow me to host an exam for students using their mobile phones.
Yeah.
And an instructor said to me, "You're going to let them write it on their phone?" And I said, "Well, why not?"
Exactly.
And
students want to do this. They want their education to be just as plugged in as the rest of their lives.
Exactly. And they said to me, well, what's going to stop the student from text messaging? And I said, well, that's the lockdown capability. That they respond to the text message, now they're locked out of their exam. They can't get back in, and they can still make emergency phone calls. And if they make that emergency phone call, they come back to their exam. Well, that's your hand's caught in a cookie jar, but that's an easy explanation to your instructor at that point in time. And I said to them, that's a reality. I said, in 5 years' time, I'm not going to be surprised if we got 40 students writing an exam with
I know.
with
It's
a mobile
amazing
phone.
what
So.
Students today can do with a very small screen format. I'm old, so I need more screen real estate. But I fully agree, and that is the future. There's no question.
Yeah, absolutely. When people talk about cheating on exams and things like that, when they start to use mobile devices, I'm thinking to myself, to me, it's a dream come true. You don't have to worry about a piece of scrap paper the student has brought into the exam room, right? You don't have to worry about any of that. What's in front of them is this tiny little mobile device, and that's the only thing. That's the only thing that they're coming and going from the exam room with. If they try to screen capture it, it locks them out of the exam. They can't email their buddies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is technology.
It's just the obvious way of the future.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
very much.
your time.
Thank you. Thanks.